Hi, I'm Old Norse specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford. The recent announcement of the discovery of the oldest written form of the name of the Norse god Óðinn in runes, which was announced in March 2023 and is traceable to the 2021 find in Vindaloo of a treasury of very early medieval, pre-Viking age, all these terms are loose-ish, 400s, 500s AD, bracteates, wearable coin-like jewelry. It's brought to my attention that people often present notions of how to write the name of Óðinn or any other Norse god in runes online, and they're almost never historically accurate to any particular period or place. And yet now we have, as far as I'm aware, 3 different stages and places in which the name of Óðinn was written down by people who believed in him as a god in runes. I think it's pretty interesting. So here's a quick look at what those spellings are.
I start this video by thanking my Patreon supporters who help make it possible for me to make a living teaching subjects of my expertise in the world's most beautiful places, and to everyone who buys my books. Thank you so much.
With the thunder, I should have done something about Thor, right? But I didn't have the inspiration in time, I suppose. So one of the Vindaloo bracteates has the oldest written form of the name of the Norse god Óðinn, and it is in the form Wōðnaz, going right to left, although of course it's an impression, so I suppose it was originally written left to right, but in Elder Futhark it doesn't matter, right? This early stage of the runes, in fact the stage people are most familiar with, the 24-letter Elder Futhark, is written left to right, or right to left, or back and forth in a pattern called Bustrophodon. It doesn't matter. The letters are just mirrored if they run right to left. So we see the form Wōðnaz, which is genitive, that means possessive. This is equivalent to saying in English Odin's, O-D-I-N apostrophe S. Why is it not Óðinn though, right? Why is it not O-D-I-N-S? Well, the form that we are most familiar with in English is specifically the late medieval Old Norse Scandinavian form, right? This is not the way that anyone speaking Old English or Old High German or Proto-Germanic would have referred to him. What's happened is in Old Norse, W's always disappear before O's or U's, before rounded vowels. So you can see this is a consistent pattern throughout the language when you have a cognate word with a native English word, both coming from their recent and common ancestor Proto-Germanic. English worm, Old Norse ormur. English wolf, Old Norse ulver, often ulver in names. English word, Old Norse orð. Old English Wōðinn or Wēdin with I mutation, Old Norse Óðinn. The W is simply lost. And it's interesting to see that there's no second vowel between the eth or D letter and the N there. That wasn't expected by anyone. Some people have suspected that this is a copying error, right? That the name was in fact in the genitive Wōðnaz or Wōðnaz. For instance, it sounded to me in our interview about these bracteates, Dr. Christopher Voss took that position. I've wondered if in fact this is just the original name, and if later branches put in an excrescent A or I, right, as far a bhakti vowel, as we often talk about it in linguistics, historical linguistics anyway, to split those two consonants apart, and that it originally didn't have a vowel there. I think that's a pretty interesting possibility, and it helps solve some of the mystery of the name, because in Old Norse we would actually kind of expect it to be Óðinn with I mutation if that I is original. Otherwise we have to assume that the A is original, that it's originally Wōðnaz, and that the I is later substituted by analogy or something, and I think that's maybe just as unlikely, if not maybe a touch more unlikely than the idea that there originally wasn't a vowel there. All right, so that's really pretty close to Proto-Germanic. Proto-Norse is probably a little bit fairer based on the late-ish time for this Elder Futhark inscription and its find location in Scandinavia. But more or less you're looking at the ancestral form of the name in any Germanic language. Let me give you a quick word from my friends and partners at Grimfrost. I'll come back and talk about an Old High German and an Old Norse, which is a later thing than Proto-Norse or Proto-Germanic inscription and runes with the name. So in the late 500s in Noldendorf, Germany, there was made, or at least deposited, a brooch which has the name of the god Óðinn honored as well. This was originally the oldest known written recording of his name. There, the spelling is Wodan. Now, that is, we could say, Proto-German. It's not quite Old High German, because in Old High German, we'd also expect this extra sound change, D to T, and probably also that long O going to Ua or even U. So Wotan or Wotan is probably what you're expecting in sort of classic Old High German. This is a little bit pre-Old High German. We also get the bonus of the Proto-German name of Thor. We see Wigi Thonar, which of course might make one think of Thor in Old Norse. Old Norse loses the N and the A there. This is actually the word, the exact same word that comes thunder in English. In English, the D is actually excrescent, by the way. It's not originally there. This Proto-German form is closer to the original. Something like Thonaraz, Thunaraz would be the Proto-Germanic form of this name. And then we do have in Old Norse the language of the Vikings and of medieval Scandinavia, which, you know, this confuses people so much because Old Norse is younger than the Elder Futhark. Old Norse was written in the younger Futhark runes, 16 letters, and there the name Óðinn would be spelled with the equivalent of the Elder Futhark letters for U, Thorn, I-N, because O and U are written with the same rune, the old U rune, in younger Futhark. And then instead of the eth sound, the th sound of then or this, being written with the D rune, it's now written with the thorn rune, the rune for the th sound in thin or theater, right? It's the difference is thin versus then. Your vocal cords vibrate if you put your fingers on them when you say the th in then, but not in thin. Their sounds as different as S and Z. But that's not recognized in younger Futhark runic writing. So this looks like you're writing Uthin, but it does in fact represent Óðinn, which is the Old Norse form of the name, with, again, W being lost before a rounded vowel. That's quite typical in Old Norse. So I like that. I think that it's interesting that we have both something very close to the proto-form recorded, something close to the very earliest form of German that will soon-ish after the Nordendorf brooch be written in the Roman alphabet, and something identical, as long as we understand the weird spellings of younger Futhark, to the name of Óðinn that we see in the Eddas written down in Iceland in the 1200s, and which give us the form of the name that we're most familiar with. English or modern Scandinavian Odin, O-D-I-N, being just an adaptation of the Old Icelandic Old Norse name, with that second N taken off because it's a case ending, and the eth turned into a D because no one but Icelanders have eths on their keyboards anymore. But by the way, you can go to your settings, general keyboard on an iPhone, and install an Icelandic keyboard and be able to type them, just like I do for editing these videos. Well, I hope that's been a half interesting detour into the history of the name of Óðinn as written in runes. And if you enjoy this channel and want to support it, I appreciate very much your support on Patreon and you checking out my books. And for now, from beautiful Wyoming, I want to wish you all the best.